Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast. My name is Sadia and I'm the podcast host. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Katie and I'm the project manager.
I'm Eve and I'm the designer.
I'm Valencia.
I'm Caitlin, and I'm the presenter.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Amy Winehouse and her album Back to Black, because we've been talking about that in our humanities class. So we have some questions for everyone. Our first question is regarding her album. I want to talk about, do we think her album and the lyrics, are they more defiant or are they more vulnerable? And Eve, do you want to start off with that?
I think I would have to say, in terms of lyrics, they're definitely vulnerable because she's like letting you into her mind and letting you into her feelings and how she responds to things. But I also kind of, when I was thinking about this question, also noticed that like the music style was kind of defiant of the constrictions that people place on jazz and R&B and reggae music. So like she kind of defies that by combining all of them into one type of music blend. But her lyrics, I would say, are probably more vulnerable. And then like music style would probably be a little bit more defiant of normal music.
Caitlin?
I can agree with that. I think the defiance comes from the cussing because in the interview we watched in the documentary, but she's also from South London, and that's pretty prevalent in that culture. It's just they're considered the less posh version of England. But I definitely agree with the vulnerability and the defiance in music, especially since they don't ever seem to match up, like her lyrics and the sound of her songs, such as Rehab, which you don't really even think about the lyrics until you look at them.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys about like how like her like style is more so defiant, especially like since she's from the UK. It's like a lot different than like the US like pop scene and stuff, and the profanity, I guess, in her songs is definitely something that like you wouldn't see as much at that time. But also I feel like her lyrics are more so like vulnerable, where it's like she's talking about her depression, and like having that open for everyone to see is like really vulnerable for her to do. So I think I can kind of see like both. But overall, like for me, I would say it's more vulnerable just because like the lyrics base, but like her style I think definitely is more defiant. But yeah, so we're gonna move on to the next question, and that is, what were your first impressions of Amy as a person / artist and her first songs from Back to Black? And did you have any knowledge or associations about her before this class? And Eve, do you want to start off with you?
Yeah, I can. I had heard a little bit of Amy Winehouse. I really had just heard Back to Black because my cousin was obsessed with her when she was in middle school. So I'd heard that song. We listened to the clean version, so I wasn't aware of her like profanity or whatever. I just kind of knew that it sounded very weird from the music I was used to listening to. I was a Disney kid, so this was very out of my element when I first listened to it. So I had that first exposure, and I was like, this is kind of weird. I don't think I'm a fan. And she, like, her words kind of blurred together. Like, she kind of like does the run-ons. So it wasn't my favorite. And I also was kind of like, why are these lyrics so dark and sad? And so I had kind of really prejudged her and like, she's just weird. And so once I watched the documentary and was kind of like learning a little bit more about her, I was like, so there's reasoning for all of that. So it kind of was like a shock to me to come to find out that she had gone through so much, and those lyrics were like based off of what she'd gone through and not just her like storytelling, you know. It was like her personal experience. So I think she's very creative and I think she's very talented. I just think I wasn't able to appreciate it when I first listened to her music.
Caleb?
Yeah, I took his class last semester and we only dissected Tears Dry on Their Own. But from what I learned from that, we didn't really look at the lyrics as much as the visual aspect of it. But I personally liked her style of music. I didn't really listen to the lyrics because, like you said, her words do tend to kind of blur together at times, but it sounds really nice, and I think that's just kind of a jazz way of looking at it. But yeah, getting to know her story and how personal these lyrics are versus just as like you look at our culture now, it's just everything's so explicit. But hers comes from her past with her father and her mother and her lovers. Like it just is intertwined so well with the way she sings.
And Katie?
Yeah, I definitely do agree with both of y'all. I feel like one of my very first impressions, like I didn't, like Eve, you didn't really know her. I didn't either. Like I've only heard her on the background of a radio or maybe like TikTok transitions, but I've never really got to dissect all of the lyrics. But ever since this class, I really realized how depressing the song was, like truly, and how like broken that she was from this guy that just went back to another girl. So it's like she's being betrayed in a way, but
Yeah. And what's your about you?
So prior to this class, I did not know Amy Winehouse at all, but my first impression of her voice really stood out to me because it seemed like very emotional, and it stood out to me because it's very rare to really hear like jazz singers in general. But her lyrics in general, they felt very vulnerable. Like in most of her songs, it's like she put herself out there she put herself out there where people didn't really understand it. And then listening to her album, it kind of gave, it was very honest and vulnerable. And then, yeah, it was very honest and vulnerable, but before this course, I really didn't know much. But after like listening to her and looking into her, I can kind of see that she kind of just used her music to really just express herself.
Yeah, I have a similar experience for y'all. Like, I knew who she was, but I didn't like know too much about her before this class. And I had heard Back to Black before, but it was just like a small little clip of it. So, and I thought I liked how the song sounded, but like my first impressions of her, like after like from watching the documentary that we saw in class, I thought she was like, I kind of like admired like how she wanted to like break away from like the norm of like the music scene and stuff. She was more so like her voice is like very like jazzy, and you don't really like hear a lot of that. Like at least at that time, where where music was popular and stuff like that. So I kind of liked how like she was willing to be like, different from others, and kind of like make herself like more like different from like the basic music scene. So yeah. But on to the next question. So we didn't get to discuss Tears Dry on Their Own or He Can Only Hold Her because of the weather. So we wanted to talk about how it deals with heartbreak and how it deals with her other songs on Back to Black, and how does it connect or compare to the rest of the album. And Eve, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I can. I listened to He Can Only Hold Her, and I was, again, hello. It goes kind of along with the trend that we've noticed, like when she has sad lyrics, the music is very upbeat, or like vice versa, when they're like more happy songs, the music is very slow. So this kind of went along with that, because she's talking about like how there's a guy and he is in love with a girl, but her heart belongs to another, so he like tries to keep her as content as he can in order to keep her with him, but he can't like win her heart because she's already given it away to somebody else. And I kind of think that's similar to like the Just Friends argument. That's like he wants to, like in Just Friends, like she wanted to be more and he wanted to like stay where they were and not put a label on it. But in this case, the girl didn't want to put a label on it, and the guy wanted, or the girl didn't want to take it further, and the guy wanted to continue to pursue her and continue to stay in their relationship. So I feel like because of that comparison with that song, and then with the opposing like music tempo and speed, and then the lyrics, like how those are often opposites in her songs, I feel like it relates very well and like it blends very well in the album, and I really enjoyed listening to it.
And Katie?
I actually did the Tears Dry on Your Own one. I feel like that song really, she wrote that kind of like after her breakup, so she's kind of like accepting the fact, but also like
Yeah. Mm. And Kaylin, what were your thoughts about that?
So Tears Dry on Their Own is actually my favorite song on the album. I listen to this pretty daily. I like the sound of it. If you look at the music video, she walks down the street kind of on her own, but there's lovers around her everywhere. Like she just walks around people who either are looking for a one night stand or who are together or just getting together or married. But she's walking down on her own, almost like this walk of shame kind of thing. And I think even the title, Tears Dry on Their Own, like she is on her own now. Nobody is there to wipe her tears. It's just her. Even though I think she did have somewhat of a support system, I think she just started to ignore that after a while because of them constantly telling her, you need to get better. But if you look at the lyrics, like he walks away, the sun goes down, he can take the day, but I'm grown. I think in her own way, she's trying to cope with it. She sees him walking away, but she's like, well, I'm grown. I can understand, like I can take it. I can be my own person. But she continues and she's like, well, I wish I've had no regrets and no emotional debts, showing that he has hurt her and he has truly like engraved on her some form of trauma, because she just keeps repeating it over and over again. And even at some points in the video, she is in the bed on her own in the morning, like the morning after, but nobody's with her. And her sheets are like stained from crying all night. I just think this one hits really hard for trying to get over a breakup, but you still think about it every day. And then you're constantly surrounded by other people who are having that affection that you don't have.
And Kaylin, did you want to add on? I mean, sorry, Katie,
Yeah.
did you want to add on?
No, sorry, but sorry, I was trying to gather my thoughts. But Eve, as she was saying, was more upbeat, and then like the lyrics were like, it didn't really match up with the song. But for this song, I really do feel like she was accepting this really toxic heartbreak that she had and just trying to move on, but she's still like, is still really hurt from it, and she's trying to get over it maybe by trying to hook up with somebody, but can't really find anyone. I don't think she could really even push herself to do that or get out there really, because I really don't think she's truly over him. But yeah, that's all I was
Hey,
saying.
those are some really good points, guys. So on to the next question. For the reading response on Amy Winehouse, we analyzed her music videos for the album. So we're going to talk about at least one of her music videos and what were the settings, scenes, outfits, lightings, colors, angles, characters that made a strong impression to us, and why do you guys think that this is the case? Also, does the video depict depression or brokenheartedness? Why or why not? And Katie, did you want to start with that one?
Sure. So in Back to Black, the whole video was like really black and white, and she kind of just sat on the chair. The angles were like they had her close up in the face, but then there was a point where they would go do like what seemed to be a funeral. So I wasn't really sure what the funeral was for. It could have been like maybe her past is like gone for life, but during that scene it was like slow motion, and there was like people surrounding her that looked kind of sad, and she kind of like walked ahead of everybody, so I couldn't really like pick apart what she was trying to talk about, but it could be something about going back in depression. I know that she didn't look too upset in the video, but I guess the characters around her again did, so I don't know.
And Valencia, what about you?
So for that one, I did Back to Black as well. In the Back to Black video, it is very dark and gloomy, so I kind of signified that as like something like it's heartbreak in the video. And usually when you see something in black and like dark and gloomy, it's usually like serious or sad. So in the video, there was a funeral, and usually when you have a funeral in the video, you do signify that as someone, a loss or something. But in the video, I didn't interpret that as like someone close family or anything. I kind of interpret that as like the loss of like a heartbreak or something. And then I felt like this heartbreak, and it felt like a real death, because usually in a heartbreak you're all sad and everything. So I interpret that as not just as like someone dying, but that heartbreak, she signified that as a death. Another thing I want to speak about in the video, the slowness in the video was very slow, and it made everything feel like more intense to the point where it made it feel like the video was just dragging on. But I do feel like it is brokenheartedness in the video, and just that's basically like the main theme of the video itself. Oh, in the video, she mentions in the song about going back to black. I signify that as she's going back to this dark place after this heartbreak, to the point where it's like every time she tried to do something, she just thought of just going back to this dark place.
And Kaylin, what about you?
So I did Rehab. At the start of the video, all the colors are pretty dulled. The people playing instruments are actually just kind of scattered everywhere, which is odd because typically you'll see them in a pit or just in a group setting. But she's what it looks like to be, I thought previously it might have been her house, but I don't think it's her house. I think it's actually her at some sort of rehab center before she goes into the actual center, just because everything is dulled, but there's trees in the background and there's like a lamp and everything is supposed to be chilled out and everything's colorful. And then she kind of transitioned into this bathroom per se, where it just progressively keeps getting duller and everything looks kind of dirty and small. And then her musicians almost seem more depressed than when they started off in the first scene, because now they're just slouched around. Their clothes have changed. One of them is in a robe now. And then we end up in a staircase, which I'm not sure entirely what this staircase is symbolizing, but it might be her about to leave for the actual rehab center, and she's just kind of mourning the loss of her freedom for a little bit. And she transitions into this white outfit, I guess, trying to look more professional for when she goes in. And then we end up in this office. So this office, just based on, there's a head on the desk that looks just something for anatomy. I'm assuming this is either a therapist or a psychiatrist's office, just based on the things on the desk. There's like a telephone and some meds and just a head sitting there. And then Amy is sitting in a chair in a white blouse and like a black jacket. So I'm assuming this is her trying to talk to a psychiatrist. But again, in the lyrics, she's like, my dad told me to go to rehab, or they told me to go to rehab. My dad said no. And then her musicians are just still kind of just following her around. And then she ends up back in that room. So I'm thinking what happened was the first scene is transitioning into before she got into rehab. And now she's in like the waiting room to go to rehab. Because in this very ending scene, it's actually very depressing. Like, everything is off, her hair is down, she's in a white tank. It's just very simple. Her musicians are done, they're tired, they're laying on things, they're barely even playing the instruments anymore. And I think this is her version of what she thinks rehab looks like. It looks shameful, it looks bad, it looks like an asylum, it looks like a cage. She's not seeing it as something that's gonna help her, but maybe something that's gonna stunt her creativity or stunt her ability to grow. When in reality, because we have such a bad stigmatism against rehab and mental institutions or even hospitals, this is why people can't get help. And I think even her marketing team was like, let's portray it as this bad, horrible place, so she looks defiant and she looks like she can grow on her own, versus actually seeking the help that she needs.
Yeah, those are some good points. I talked about, for the reading response, I talked about Back to Black, and I think Valencia and Katie were both kind of like talking about some things that I talked about, like how like it was in black and white, which kind of represents sadness, and then also like it was a funeral, and I kind of like interpreted that as like the loss of like her relationship with Blake, and like how you can just tell like I kind of talked about like how if she's like kind of like comparing the end of that relationship to like a death, like it must have been like really serious, and like you can tell that she really cared about this person. So I feel like that really like shows like how brokenhearted she was about like that whole situation. So that's kind of like what I took from the that music video. But moving on to the next question. So in class we didn't have time to discuss the album covers. So we're gonna be looking at the UK one, which is her sitting in the chair, and then the USA one, which is her leaning back in the bathtub. And we're gonna talk about why we think she used those images, and does either image depict broken heartbreak or depression? Why or why not? And Caitlin, do you want to start?
So I'm gonna start off with the UK version. The lettering is the same between both of them, but in the UK version, she's sitting behind like a chalkboard on a chair in this kind of colorful outfit in this awkward position with her hair down. To me, this is very vulnerable. Like, it's supposed to be awkward. She's going through the motion of getting together and then breaking up and then having to go to rehab, and then she loses her grandmother. And then these little drawings back here on the chalkboard, there's a bunch of erase marks. It seems as if she's trying to write something down or draw faces, or there even looks like a little bit of a grave back here. And she just keeps erasing it over and over and over again. And she just looks so tired in this one. And I think it just shows how exhausted she is, to the point where she doesn't even want to do her hair. She just looks lost and sad. And she's just exhausted, and the eraser, I think right here, is in her hand, and she just can't go anymore. But when you look at the US version, she's put together. She might be in a bathtub, but she's put together. Her hair is up, her makeup is on, everything. I mean, marketing wise, it makes more sense. The album is called Back to Black. The entire background is black, and the only thing highlighting it is Amy. But if you want to really get into it, the UK version is better because it's for her personally, because I think it just encapsulates the whole album as what's going on in her life versus just a marketing technique, which is what they dumbed her down to at some points in the documentary. And that's what the US version is. It's just to market it to a different country to make sure it sells. But the original one is her capturing her mental state at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like those are some really good points. Like, I think the UK version is more so like depicting like her actual and true self, because like again, like she's from UK. That UK version is really supposed to like show like her like authenticity, but then the US version, it's more so like you were saying, like marketing to people and like making sure like she's like all dressed up. But we kind of like know like from her, like she's not the type to like really like be like that, like all dressed up, like making sure like she looks good for cameras and all that. She's not like that. So I feel like the UK version definitely like more so shows like her actual personality and is more reflective of the Back to Black album. But moving on to the next question, the title of a piece in the first impression we as audience members get the work for this question. Let's pretend Back to Black was unavailable. What should the title be instead? You can use any lyric or concept or title that you think might work to describe or encapsulate the experience of listening to the album, and how would this album be different with this title? And Eve, do you want to do that one?
I was thinking about it, and I feel like if we had to pick a different song to choose, like a different song from the album to make the album cover, I feel like Love is a Losing Game would be a perfect one, because even though every single, like all of the songs kind of mean something different, like sometimes she's got the guy, sometimes she doesn't, but like overall, it's majority her loss, her depression, like she doesn't have what she wants, she's the side chick. So like even though there are a few songs where, oh, I got what I want, and oh, he's mine, like I'll fight in this war or unholy war with you, but it's more of the like total, like the song, the whole album itself is more negative and more like depressed. And so I feel like if you had to pick a different title and it was from a song like I'm choosing that because Back to Black was one of the was a song title and the album title. So like if you had to do the exact same thing, I feel like Love Is a Losing Game would probably be the ideal one because I feel like it just encompasses it so well, encompasses the whole of the album so well. So I feel like that's what I would pick if I were her and had to pick a different one.
Yeah, I really like how, because I didn't even think to, choose, another, song that's from the album. I think that was, a really good choice for that one. But, moving on to our last question. So, Mr. Diehl has used this album every time he's taught the course. Should he use a shorter documentary or, discussion of live performances of the songs to the syllabus? And why or why not? And Eve, do you want to start with that one?
I can, yeah. I really think this encompasses brokenheartedness, her whole story encompasses brokenheartedness so well. So in terms of this class, I feel like this is a perfect example to use. I feel like the documentary took up a good amount of class time, but I feel like it was worth the class time that we took on it. I feel like you really got to see her progression as an artist and her progression as a person through that documentary, and if you got a shorter one, it might not feel the same. I feel like discussion of live performances would be very helpful though. So kind of seeing her performances in the beginning and then some in the middle and then some at the end, kind of seeing how stardom took over her kind of, and how you see her getting worn out and you see her kind of getting tired and not wanting to do it anymore. So I feel like maybe adding in some live music, concert performances may be helpful in seeing that transition in terms of her singing and not just her living her life. But I definitely think it should continue to be used, and I also think that the documentary should stay the same too.
And Valencia, what are your thoughts?
So I do agree that he should keep using this in this album in the course, because it's a very strong example on how the music can express your real emotions and everything that's going on in your life. I do also think that if he adds some short performances, that you do not short performances and the live performances, you can simply hold on, I messed that up. If you add some short performances and we basically see how Amy performs, that we can it will basically help others basically understand and deeply connect with how everything that's going on with her.
And Kaylin, what about you?
He should definitely keep her music because I think it's a really good blend of looking closer at lyrics even when we listen to other songs that are not her, because rhythms and beats and tones can be so misleading until you look at the lyrics. And if you really want to get into it deeper, that's depression. Masking is very easy for some people. You would never know somebody is depressed if they're happy or they're smiling or they're always around. You look at her music is happy, or it sounds happy and upbeat, but you look at the lyrics and nobody's really listening to the lyrics. They're listening to that happy, upbeat music. So if you really wanted to get into it, her album is her just masking her depression, even though she is calling out for help multiple times throughout the album. But I definitely think we should watch a couple of live performances, because I would have loved to discuss that one towards the end of the documentary where she just refused to even sing. She just sat there and walked around and looked scared out of her mind with everyone trying to get her to sing. But the documentary was great. I really think it encaptured her whole story. And it does really hit hard, especially at the beginning where she was like, I don't think I'll ever be famous. That would kill me. And it did. Her fame did kill her, because all of the pressure on her finally broke her, and she just passed away from probably an overdose of medication or her alcohol level. But yes, I do think he should keep her as an artist in the class.
All right, thank you guys for all your amazing points that you made, and I honestly really enjoyed listening to Amy Winehouse's songs and watching the documentary. But thank you to everyone for listening to our podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.